All right, welcome to the third episode of DMBG's Fireside Chat. Myself, Steve Carrot, and today I've got with me
Matthew Grogan.
Thanks, Matt. Why are you dressed like that?
Well, we're in Vegas at Adobe Summit, and our theme this year is British pub culture. Why is that our theme?
Because we wanted to stand out. I think we wanted to show our Britishness, stand out a little bit, do something different, rather than have all the kind of jargon and business spinach.
Yeah, but I think I would also add to that many of the most valuable things that I've learned and have made me who I am today in my career. I've learned at the pub after work.
Do you want to thank your mum or your dad or anything?
No.
Okay.
Thanks to my fellow drinkers.
Okay. And what are we going to talk about today?
Big topic, CJA and GA4.
Okay, now just for everyone watching, listening, CJA is what?
So CJA is the new kid on the block, I guess, from Adobe. Well, depending on who you ask, new. Been in development for a long time. What is it? What's the big deal? I think the first place, maybe if I'm speaking to people who already know Adobe Analytics, it's, in Adobe Analytics, every business comes up against the outskirts of their data. And so they will have a problem that can't be solved just with the data in Adobe Analytics. And they can't get.
Give us an example.
Returns data. So you're running an A/B test and you think it's having a great effect on conversion, but it could just be tanking your returns rate and not getting you additional money. As of right now, not really that easy to solve in Adobe Analytics. But CJA, one of the main characteristics is it breaks out that kind of digital data mindset, allows us to bring in those other data sets. So in that example, we bring in our returns data.
So if you can bring in other data sets, presumably you can stitch all of that data from multiple sources.
Yeah, that would be
single ID. Is that the idea?
That'd be point two. So the whole thing is obviously tied to AEP and the concept of the visitor profile.
AEP being
Adobe Experience Platform. AEP is obviously also might know it's their CDP product, which is real-time CDP. All of that, the kind of underpowering profile of that is the unified profile. And as Steve said, it essentially allows you to bring together all the customer identities that you know for a customer and stitch that into one living profile. We might get into that in a bit more detail later.
Okay, so customer journey analytics is, so it's an analytics system, but it's not necessarily just web or app. It's kind of all data sets joined up by a customer ID. So it's fundamentally different from, say, the device ID, cookie ID based analytics systems that exist out there, right?
Yes. In that sense. All right. The offline, non-digital data.
Okay.
And ability to tie those.
So obviously that's like one key difference. Now what we're going to be talking about is customer journey analytics and its relationship to GA4, because a lot of people might consider those systems that are just a completely separate, and therefore you wouldn't ever think you would want to run them together. So let's start with how they're different, and then we can start to pull that back together. So key differences. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty versed in this because I think the past year, particularly in the European market, we've seen a lot of businesses who have wanted to ask that question of what is the fundamental purpose of Google GA4 and how does that compare to Adobe Analytics more so, but obviously CJ as well. Do you know what? I'm so hot. I'm struggling to actually think. Cut this bit out. I might have to undo this, honestly.
I'm sweating here, but I'm still going. Edit the question.
Okay, do that question again. What was it? What are the key differences?
No, that's fine. Just pick it up from there. I'll edit it. Make it look smooth.
Cool. What are the key differences between CJA and GA4? Well, yeah, I think the scope of GA4 is... Let me pick that up again. What are the key differences between CJA and GA4? Well, I think pretty much everything in GA4 stems from the fact that it is adjacent to Google marketing platform, adjacent to Google marketing ecosystems. And by that, it's kind of really, in my opinion, it's more of an ad server approach first, rather than an expansive digital analytics platform. UA, Universal Analytics, the predecessor, at least you could claim that it was a bit more of a functioning analytics platform. But I think the alignment has shifted much more with GA4. It's pretty much first and foremost for managing your kind of spend and campaigns in Google marketing ecosystem. And by that, I mean, yes, you have all of your analytics data. It's very, very closely tied to cost data, to campaigns, to conversions in GMP. I guess the other big difference is, and one of these key characteristics about GA4 is what you can actually do in the platform, what you have to push outside of the platform to do. Anytime we kind of have a conversation with someone around GA4 and we say, well, can it do this? The answer we get is, oh yeah, of course you can do that in GA4. You can do everything in GA4. But obviously we don't mean that. What we mean is we can take that data out into BigQuery and we can do it there. And that's not the same thing. It requires a different set of resource, different set of, it's a different approach.
Yeah. So they're not just differences then as such. They're actually completely separate systems, right? Yeah. GA4, from what you're saying, it's an advertising and marketing kind of optimization and performance tool, right? Which relatively high level. CJA is actually, it's a customer analytics, like an advanced insight platform that you pull all your sources into. So it does kind of beg the question, could GA4 just be one of the sources in CJA?
Yep, it could be. I think, again, back to that conversation, when in the past we've been having that conversation about GA4 and Adobe, always been an adversarial conversation. It's always been a either or, whether that's in money terms, whether that's in people liking one platform more. I think the big thing about CJA, and I guess the reason why maybe we're doing this video, is in my opinion, it kind of shifts the dynamic of that conversation. So it no longer goes from being a or conversation. It can be an and conversation. So how can they complement each other? And yeah, the reason for that, in a nutshell, is pretty much that CJA can sit one level above GA4, and it can essentially ingest the GA4 dataset, and you can work with that in CJA whilst maintaining all the benefits you get from GA4 being close to the Google marketing ecosystem.
So let's cover that then. So if you were to have CJA, Customer Journey Analytics, as the kind of parent, if you like, and then have GA4 be used, or even one of the data sources, what would be the use case behind warranting doing that? What kind of, why would a business want to do that, and what benefit would they get from doing that?
I think the reason this is quite a difficult one to answer,
and when I ask that question, actually, to clarify, because it's a difficult one, compared to just throwing it all in GA4 and then just doing whatever you want on top of the data that comes out of BigQuery, right? Because that is kind of the or option, isn't it? Right? It's different, but it's still the kind of what you could do. So yeah, maybe to have let's hear about some of those use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, broadly in my mind, I think about this in two different ways. So the first kind of first kind of scenarios where they might have use cases for this is, it's analysis, right? It's I run GA4 and I can't get all the analysis out of it I want. We're not going to go into kind of limitations of GA4. It's pretty well known.
But it has limitations.
It does have limitations.
A lot of limitations.
But yeah, and when I say limitations, you're going to run into a few things. So one, we've already mentioned it, need to do this analysis in BigQuery a lot of the time. So capability of Looker and GA4 just simply isn't flexible enough to get things done that you need. Another big limitation that doesn't come up as much as it should do, a limitation on data quality, on sampling. So obviously we've seen this big piece, and it has been known for a while, about quality of data you can get in the GA4 interface. Essentially, it's not robust enough to do statistical analysis from, right? If you're trying to do A/B testing and you are trying to get accurate results and perform statistical analysis due to this kind of HLL++ approximation that they're using.
Because you're talking about the approximation of user and session count.
Yeah,
right? So you can't do your actual conversion.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's another limit that you may come into there. So in that scenario, well, what are the use cases for joint running? It's, carry on doing all these great marketing things that we can do in GA4, but essentially take out these more analysis heavy use cases and stop executing those in GA4. Bring them across. It can't be done there in a robust way, in a scalable way, in a quick way. Let's be honest. So take those out of GA4 and bring them into Adobe.
So bring the power back into the hands of the analysts. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But why? Why do that? I mean, obviously, we would probably consider ourselves analysts, but we're not saying this to benefit ourselves. Why are we going to give this power to the analysts? Why do they need that kind of functionality?
Yeah, let's stick on this kind of area. So we're talking about analysis use cases. For me, this is like the analog I like to bring up is it's like driving an automatic versus driving a manual. What would you drive?
Well, I was driving a stick shift.
Yeah, okay, a manual. But we are in America. We don't want our analysts bogged down in the plumbing, in the thinking about how we get the data into a position where we can get value from it. We want our analysts concentrating on getting the value from the data. I don't want to be, and so back to driving analogy, I don't want to be thinking about changing gear and not stalling. I want to be driving. I want to be fully brain focused on the analysis and not having any distractions. That's when the best insights come out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
No distractions. So yeah, it's a good tangent to make off this first area of use cases, which would be split across the two, and that's the first one. So analysis, try and bring in some of that tactile, flexible analysis that needs to get done out of GA4 and bring it into the Adobe world. That's the first area.
Yep.
But moving on to the second area, I think, and again, this is where it kind of depends, well, what business are we talking about, but the second area is all around activation. So, massive benefit, and again, pretty much one of the key reasons that people run GA4, and we have our media agencies and people in there, is we've got that turnkey audience access to Google ecosystem. So if I want to build a retargeting audience, if I want to build an audience that's slightly more flexible, I can do that in GA4 and I can push it to the Google ecosystem. But that's just one ecosystem, right? Yeah. That's only getting into Google Marketing Platform. So
I mean, it's a pretty big ecosystem,
I know,
but for some businesses that might only represent 10% of their all advertising spend, right? Others 90%, and maybe going down a CJA route for someone who's 90% invested in the Google stack might not be the right thing, maybe. But if you've got quite a diverse mix of marketing channels, actually there is an argument to suggest, well, this is just GA4 and its capability is just a tool into that particular channel that you've got there, right?
But yeah, I think more importantly, the conversation changes when you get CDP. So if you were a business that had then bought into either the AEP, real-time CDP, or another CDP, not really that important, well, suddenly, again, these tools have the ability to execute in Google marketing ecosystem. So you've chipped down against the kind of a key piece of reliance on GA4 there. And the other thing is, it's not just the Google ecosystem that they can execute. So you've got a kind of a fun situation where you need to manage your audiences, and the natural place then starts to not really look like GA4. It starts to come across to maybe whichever CDP you're running. And then let's bring back in that idea of kind of the cost data, the campaign data. We know that's the reason that people obviously want to run GA4 and they want to have close access to that data. But it's not impossible to get that in the Adobe ecosystem, right? Yeah. So pretty well known, and again, it's documented. We can, with a bit of custom process, get that data, the cost data, the campaign data of Google media campaigns. We can get that out of that ecosystem, and we can get it joined and unified against our Adobe data. So again, we're getting another kind of area of use cases here where does it make sense to execute activation use cases in GA4? Not as much if you're expanding your tooling outside of,
if you're sort of less invested in the Google stack and you're sort of more sort of spread. Okay. So just summarizing then, kind of key use cases for sort of why you might have CJA as well as a GA4 setup, right? So customer level analysis, like deeper analysis capabilities in near real time right, with the kind of drag and drop interface that we're familiar with from Adobe Analytics that exists in customer journey analytics. So you can get those insights super quick, right, at a customer level. You've then got all the kind of scalability aspects of your data reliability, right? So you've got all the kind of advanced data governance, which we won't go into today. That's a dry topic, but there's a lot of data governance capabilities and having robust data in the tool, right? So sort of getting all your data sets in there so you can have a scalable infrastructure. And then we're also talking about the activation layer. So being able to activate far beyond the Google ecosystem as well. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Well, let's talk about the data governance one for one second.
You want to talk about?
No, not necessarily data governance. Let's talk about consent mode. I feel like we disagree slightly about it. I mean, yeah, when we start to peel away the reasons that people are running GA4 or sticking with GA4 or seeing GA4 as a necessity, consent mode is one of them, right? What is consent mode? Let's just recap ourselves. You know, whether it's advanced mode, whether it's basic mode, it is a way of sending the data for people that have not consented to tracking into Google, and basically allowing them to do some kind of modeling on it, so we can build back our data set and we can get to an accurate number on a CPA. And yeah, there isn't really anything equivalent on the Adobe side of things, right? Whether you like it or hate it, there is not an equivalent. Whether you see it,
but let's just hang on a sec. Let's just stop there. Just stop there for a second. So, consent mode with non-consented data. Google are saying that they will model this data and tell you how well Google's ads are performing, and you have no way of verifying that. I just want to make sure that's what you just said.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, good. And people want that?
Yeah. This is coming from myself. I'm an Adobe person, aren't I? So for me to be saying that there is value in that, yeah. Like, I mean, let's not overestimate what the value is. It's saving you from having to do a little calculation in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, but why not? Why not use GA4 as a data source for, say, web data? Use the modeled, the non-modeled, non-consented events that go into it. Take it out of BigQuery, and then do something with it elsewhere, right? Where you do have control over it. Why have Google tell you how well their ads have performed?
It's a lot of effort for something that we're not. A minute ago, you weren't convinced that it was worth doing, but anyway. No, but I mean, look, the main point to underscore that is, it is a reason. It's the thing that comes up in a lot of conversations why people, and to be fair to Google, they will be throwing, I don't know exactly how it works, but they're throwing a lot of processing at it. Yeah. And it probably will be costing them a fair bit. And why are they doing it? Because they know that accurate view on the CPAs will increase the ad spend. But if you're a marketer, that's important for you.
Okay.
So yeah.
So is it in any way confusing then? So let's say someone's bought into this idea that, okay, fine, we're going to have CJA as a kind of like parent analytics system, might still use GA4. Is it in any way confusing that they might now have two systems?
Is it confusing? Yes, I suppose it is confusing. I think it's going to come down to the people. I guess we had this conversation the other day. Will we see media agencies inside CJA? Loads of media agencies are inside GA4 today. Will we see the same? It's too early to say. It's a more complicated platform. But, okay, wider question is, will we, I'm sure there's loads of media agencies and CDPs today. That's kind of the equivalent, right? What are you getting at? What part of it is confusing for you?
Well, the fact that you might have like session counts, or you might have order counts in two different systems.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think my line of thinking nowadays is yes. I think the things we agree on, we can kind of agree that you cannot physically do everything that you can do in GA4 in CJA, right? So we have a situation where, you may want to run these things at the same time.
You're talking when you say that, you're talking about primarily the ad like impressions and the kind of down at the kind of keyword level, ad group level, right? And then also
I just mean the
activation
things,
back in.
The four things we generally just said there. I don't even think that's the hard bit to say that we can't do everything on one platform. The harder bit onwards from that is saying, well, how do we do this? How do we plan an architecture that makes sense in the business, doesn't confuse everyone? How do we ensure that data is the same and is unified between both platforms? That's very important as well. Performance. How do we make it performant architecture? It'd be very easy to the easy answer is just slap GTM and GA4 on and slap Adobe Launch and and CJA on.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's the cop-out answer. I think we can be a lot smart about this. I think obviously server-side is the kind of jumping off point that begins to make some of these more complex dual running scenarios a lot more attractive, right? Obviously what server-side allows us to do is minimize the data collection that we have to do client-side, but maximize where that data can go server-side. So no longer, I mean, again, not just for kind of performance reasons. Remember, if you put GTM and Adobe Launch on your client side and configure them separately, we suddenly got two implementations you have to maintain. So that's not a smart thing to do. So again, it's not just from a performance perspective, it's from a maintenance perspective that we are, I guess, ourselves encouraging people and encouraging you to be smarter and consider running it server side. Again, I say that in one breath, and the next breath, I'm going to say that you come up against some challenges there, depending on what kind of business you are. If you are a business that's deep into AEP, deep into that suite, but you're not going to have many problems with event forwarding. So event forwarding is the Adobe Launch server-side product. Adobe Tags, apologies.
It's not called Launch anymore.
The Adobe Tags server-side product. It's bundled with AEP. If you take out real-time CDP, great, good news for you. If you don't, if maybe you're one of those businesses that we spoke about earlier that you're not so much looking at it for dual running in an activation sense, but you just want to make the most out of analysis, but you're going to come across fun there because, again, I'm not sure the exact details, but it's not by default that you will get an event forwarding allowance in Adobe Tags. So your configuration option for collecting data client side and sending that onwards from the server is not looking like Adobe Launch, Web SDK client side. You're going to have to find some other method for getting that to your server side solution. Again, what's that going to be? Suddenly that puts us probably back into the Google world. And this is another interesting area where, Google, I feel like I could say this. The server side GTM product is probably much better loved and much more of a presence in the market than any kind of parallel.
Far more cost effective as well, right?
And far more cost effective, if you want to say that. So, we've gone from a conversation that started off at the point of analysis. So what should I do my analysis in GA4 CJA? And we kind of come all the way down that decision tree to suddenly talking about, well, actually, this is really going to affect how I deploy these tools. You have to think through, almost a whole stack when you're trying to make these kind of decisions and these kind of architecture decisions for your business. Guess that makes it kind of fun. Or it's starting to sound quite complex, Matt, in terms of all the possible use cases, the scenarios, the reasons for the architecture. I feel like there should be some material that the viewers and the readers might want to get hold of to help them through this. Well,
what have we got?
Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
At Staples right now, in the suburbs, northern suburbs of Las Vegas.
We can probably see it. It's like 20 miles that way, isn't it?
There is an important document being printed. This document has a very ambitious and resonating title. It's called CJA and GA4, Better Together. And it's a clarion call for better relations between the two products. And in that, we kind of get into a lot more detail of these kind of complicated factors.
There's a lot of detail. How many pages is it? 50? 52?
52 pages.
52 pages, yeah.
All quality.
Yeah.
And a lot of nice pictures in there as well. Some of these things are quite hard to talk about.
Some pretty pictures as well.
Some pretty pictures. So some of these things are a bit harder to talk about. But that will be dropping soon. As soon as we get as soon as we learn the size of the paper used in the US, that was
it's a bit shorter and fatter,
A4. So forgive us for that. But do keep an eye on that. that'll be dropping
Yeah.
very soon.
So what do you recommend? You recommend that people take a look at that and then give us a call, or just give us a call?
Yeah, drop me a text.
Yeah. Drop you a text. And we're going to give you a phone number on it as well, right?
If I don't boil to death in the next 3 minutes, this is the first time we put on these suits, and
it's very warm. It's very warm in here.
Count,
Yeah.
This beer is cooling me off nicely.
But I think the last thing to say, obviously, thank you for your sweaty time on the Fireside chat. If you would like to find out anything more about GA4 or Customer Journey Analytics, or how to use the two things together, we're the people to talk to. There's a team of people behind us as well to make that a reality. So, yeah, come and have a chat to us and we'll be happy to help.
All right. Oh my God, honestly.